So we are entering into the last days of the holiday of Pesach. The last days here. So I wanted to take a moment and share with you some thoughts as before sundown. Once the sun goes down, the holiday begins, and so does the end of putting on the phone, etc. And it's like Shabbat. So I thought I will share and explain a little bit what is the last day of the holidays of Pesach all about. So the last day of Pesach, the last 2 days of Pesach, which begins tonight at sundown, is referred to as Shvi'i Shel Pesach, and the last, which means the 7th day of Pesach, and the last day is called Achron Shel Pesach, which means the last day of Pesach. Now let me explain a little bit the significance of these two last days, since we already all had to say to the first days. So what's going on now? What is this all about? So here we go. The 7th day of Pesach, in a sense, is more Pesach than Pesach. What do I mean by that? The 7th day of Pesach is when the Jews arrived at the Yam Suf, the sea, and that is when the splitting of the sea happened. And if you remember the learning of the Parsha, the Torah, it discusses that the Jews were frightened because the Egyptians were chasing after them, and it is only when they came to the sea that they saw the greatest miracle of the opening and the splitting of the sea, that they, in a sense, truly left Egypt. Meaning, they left Egypt at the beginning of Passover, but as long as they were still under the fear of being returned to Egypt, emotionally, they haven't left Egypt yet. When did they leave Egypt emotionally and completely, totally? Was by the splitting of the sea. And that happened on the 7th day of Pesach, which we celebrate tonight and tomorrow. On a spiritual level, what that also represents, in addition to, of course, the miracle of Exodus and when we become a people, but what that also represents is that splitting of the sea on a spiritual level, as discussed in Hasidic teachings, represents the fact that just like a sea, the water, the ocean, covers everything that's in the ocean, and the opening of the sea symbolically means we all of a sudden have a window into that which is usually concealed, that which is usually hidden. Now, the way God created the world is that what we see before our eyes are materialism, temptation, etc. Holiness, godliness, spirituality, our soul, our holy spark within us, these are all things that are concealed, but they're there. The splitting of the sea symbolically, spiritually represents that all of a sudden all these coverings, all these concealments are removed, and we're able to see the essence and the core of things. We're able to see the godly energy that sustains this world. We're able to see the goodness and the holiness of our soul within each one of us. All that is representing in the opening, in the splitting of the sea. So on a spiritual level, it's a very, very special day. Again, on this day, all that is concealed. I mean, we're living through a time where there's a lot of concealment, there's a lot of tsaris, there's a lot of illness, there's a lot of death, unfortunately. And so we want to have the opening of the sea, meaning the removal of all this concealment that sometimes leads to tsaris and problems and difficulty and struggle, and we want to have goodness and kindness and openness and holiness and all that goes together. World peace. All that will happen and can happen and will happen, because the next day, which is Achron Shel Pesach, the prophet that we read when we are in the synagogue, is about the future, the days of Mashiach, which is what, again, the prophets have prophesied, the time when everything, the way things ought to be, the way God wants it to be, the purpose of creation and its wholesomeness and completeness and ultimate peace and healing will come to fruition, as the prophets have told us. So the last days of Pesach are very, very important days. And that's why we celebrate the last days of Pesach. And to put it in maybe a little bit other words, is that the first days of Pesach, we celebrate more our history, where we came from, which is very important. You can't, as the song goes, how do you know where you're going to if you don't know where you're coming from? That's the beginning of Pesach. The last days of Pesach is more the celebration of what's gonna be, the future. The hope and the knowledge and the conviction that if God promised us that it will be better, and this is not what God had intended when He created the world, a world that has strife and division and killing and illness and sickness. That's not what Hashem wanted. It's not what God wanted. It's not what it's all about. There is the hope and the conviction, which is why there is a custom on the last day of Pesach, instituted by the Baal Shem Tov, to have what's called a Su'udat Mashiach, a meal celebrating and praying and hoping for the imminent coming of Mashiach. Because on the last day of Passover, once we've gone out of Exodus and we've celebrated our past, and we celebrate the fact that we're still connected to our beautiful past, we are convinced that we will also have a much better future, which is all what the coming of Mashiach is all about. So I want to conclude. I actually thought about getting my boys together. Maybe I still will, but I don't know if I'll have a chance. But being that I'm a Kohen, and on Pesach, on the last days of Passover, one of the things Kohanim do is they do the priestly blessings on the last day, the 2 last days of Pesach. But since we will not have phone connection or phone access on that time, so let me give you the Birchat Kohanim. Vayedaber Adonai el Moshe lemor, daber el Aharon vel banav lemor, ko tavarechu et bnei Yisrael amor lahem, yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, yair Adonai panav elecha v'yichuneka, yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom, v'samu et shmi al bnei Yisrael v'ani avarachem. That is the priestly blessings. You could look up the translation in Deuteronomy in the second portion of Naso. It is a very, very beautiful blessing, and it includes all blessings. And in fact, the beauty of the priestly blessings, it says that it comes about quickly. It comes down and comes into our realm, into our world very, very quickly. May it be so. Again, I want to wish you a beautiful last days of Pesach. Remember to have a Sudat Mashiach, as the Baal Shem Tov suggested, which is sitting down and having some matzah and 4 cups and talking and learning about Mashiach. There's a lot that you can learn about if you go to Mashiach.com. You could learn there. There's much material that you could see about the coming of Mashiach. So again, may the last days of the holiday be uplifting, meaningful, spiritual, and draw down only blessings of freedom, blessings of a better future. Everybody good Yom Tov, and hope to see you in a higher level after we've experienced the beauty of Yom Tov on the other end after the holiday. Everybody good Yom Tov.